Met Office has issued a rare red weather warning.
Man is killed in Northern Ireland as Storm Arwen hits northern parts of the UK.
Conditions really are brutal. There's driving, rain, dropping temperatures, and winds are forecast to potentially gust to up to 90 miles an hour.
With winds of nearly 100 miles an hour, leaving more than 100,000 homes without power.
We didn't get it as rough as some when Storm Arwen hit us last year. But it did unfortunately take out the polytunnel we'd built just 2 years earlier, and we'd really only just begun to make full use of. Jimmy had been down and stripped the plastic early in the morning before the garden centre opened, so it didn't blow away. So when I arrived later, it was just a skeleton of twisted metal, and it was pretty hard to figure out what had happened and which parts were which. As the light fell, Jimmy and I removed what damaged sections we could to make things safe, while Dad collected up all the tender plants and transferred them into one of the buildings to try and salvage what we could. As the winter rolled on, we got to thinking about how we were going to fix things. The front half of the polytunnel was toast, the rear half was okay, and we weren't insured. So we'd have to keep the cost down where we could. We had found that we needed more space for loading and other activities in front of the polytunnel, and this presented an opportunity to resolve that by shortening the tunnel by about a third. Therefore, we only had to rebuild a couple of hoops, which would reduce the immediate cost of rebuilding the tunnel. We would add a second bay in the future. Hopefully. The timber sections of the polytunnel hadn't fared well with the humid atmosphere, and some areas had begun to rot. Indeed, that's what we think may have failed. Given the huge increase in timber costs at the time, we decided to invest in aluminium sections around the base and on the ends, which would make repairs easier in future, as the plastic sheets just clip in and out rather than nailing timber battens on. We decided to add a gutter to the far side of the polytunnel. This isn't something we had originally, as we were trying to keep costs down then too. But this time we know that we want to add an extra bay as soon as we can, as we will have less space, and the gutter will be required to connect the two polytunnels together. And as we're trying to reduce water use on site, collecting more rainwater feeds into that strategy. The day arrived in early spring when we would sheet the polytunnel, and although Jimmy had been heavily involved in the construction of the original tunnel, we had a company come in to sheet it. This time, however, Jimmy had been on YouTube. He assured me he knew what he was doing. So, we got stuck in. All went to plan more or less. With no major hiccups, plants were salvaged. Jimmy continued to tinker, and we're pleased to say we're all back up and running. Fingers crossed for no big storms this year, but if we do, we have a few tricks up our sleeves. So stay tuned for updates.
Want a pet?
Go away!
Yeah.
So you need to face that.
Well, you face it, so when you're looking at the screen, that's when it's filming, look. You see Uncle Jimmy?